All right, here we go. Today we have Matisyahu. Welcome to VladTV.
What's up, Vlad? Thanks for having me, man.
Man, I've been a longtime fan. In fact, when I got to New York and I was living in Borough Park around 2003, that was around the time I was seeing your posters around and, you know, seeing your name next to like Beanie Man and the posters all around Brooklyn.
There was that one
everything.
Reggae Carafest poster. Yeah, one poster in particular, the Carafest poster, and it had all the legends like Buju and all the top Jamaican artists and one Hasidic dude right in the middle. It was kind of crazy. It was
that was wild. That was actually a wild time, you know, and years later, this is like, what, almost 20, a little more than 20 years later, we're actually doing the interview.
Yeah. Oh, that's crazy, man. Yeah, that was the time.
Well, it's your first time here. I want to start in the very, very beginning. So you were born in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Okay. But then when you were a baby, you guys went to Berkeley, California.
Correct.
Yeah, that's where I went to college myself, and I spent a lot of years there. Interesting place.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think my very first concerts were Grateful Dead, 1980, 81. So I was 2 years old. My parents were sort of deadheads that kind of missed the Berkeley era. And then they lived on a farm. And one day, the kid that used to like have breakfast with them, like the owners of the farm, the kid would have breakfast with them every morning. And one day the news was on, and it was talking about Jews. And the kid goes, my parents said they all should have been killed in the Holocaust. So my dad was like, all right, let's go, let's go to California. Let's drive across country. And they drove across country to Berkeley. And that's where I went to Berkeley Montessori School. And that was the foundational, point of my first 4 years of life. So I always feel like a strong connection to that, even though, I don't remember that much. I feel like my roots are in Berkeley in a way.
You're living in Berkeley, and your parents are both Jewish.
Correct.
How Jewish are they? Because as a Jew myself, there's a huge gamut from not Jewish at all, eating pork, never go to temple, to ultra-Orthodox.
So at that point, they're not very Jewish at all. I mean, I think my dad wears a Star of David around his neck. They spent some time in Israel. They were going to make Aliyah, so they have a strong connection to Israel. And I think they feel Jewish, but they're not religious in any way. And it's not until we moved back to New York, we moved to White Plains, New York, and they found sort of like a Reconstructionist synagogue they felt comfortable in, sort of a very liberal kind of place, egalitarian. And they had a Hebrew school there. They started sending me to Hebrew school there after regular public school or whatever. So on Monday and Wednesday, I would go from 4 to 6, Sunday 10 to 12. Did that till I was 13 or whatever, till I got bar mitzvahed. And then basically when I was 16, I went on a conservative program to Israel, where I spent 3 months in school there in the fall. That was a pretty pivotal moment for me, I'd say. And then I myself didn't become religious till I was in college. I was at the new school. I was like 21. It was right around the time of 9/11. And that's when I started really becoming religious. And then I really, went for it, moved to Crown Heights and yeshiva and the whole 9 yards.
Well, let's talk about a little bit before then.
Yeah.
So you're going to high school, but at one point you kind of started to rebel a little bit. And I guess you went to a Fish concert while you were still in high school?
Yeah, I went to see Fish at the Centrum in Worcester, Mass. I was 16. I'd come back from Israel, and I had kind of had this whole kind of spiritual trip there a little bit. I was sort of on something a little bit different than my friends and everybody else. I was kind of questioning a lot of things and starting this journey kind of. At that time, I met my friend from Israel at a Fish show, and we dropped acid for the first time, 16 years old, and the music, the experience that I had there, I think also, again, was like one of really, really monumental moment in my life. I became a fan of Fish to this day. That's really the only band that I go see. I will pay money to get tickets and just bug out and just dance. My wife is into them. Bring the kids sometimes, everything. Yeah, I'm like a real fan.
I remember when I was reading this while researching you, what's interesting was when I was a little bit older, maybe around 23, 24, I went to Burning Man and I did acid for the first time myself. And I had brought a drum with me and I got into a drumming circle. And that was the first time I ever performed, to a crowd, because people started to gather around and dance to me and this other guy who were drumming together. And at that moment, high off acid in a drum circle at Burning Man, I decided that I'm going to be a DJ and I'm going to devote my life to music. And it was a total switch from what I was doing, because I was a computer science guy but it was interesting hearing you say that and hearing me, my experience. It's like, oh, it's kind of similar in a way.
Yeah, no, I mean, literally, like that, like almost the exact experience. I mean, I lived in Burlington, Vermont, in the park that fall. I had dropped out of high school. I got into a fight with my parents and left. And a friend of mine had a little VW bus, and we drove to Burlington, and we just camped out in the park for a few weeks. And we went to then we ended up at a rainbow gathering. And during that time, I heard someone singing Rastaman chant in the park. Just a dude with a drum, this dude named Nature Boy. I recently ran into him again. He's in Baltimore. He's just, he works for like the government. He's like works for the Navy now or something like that. But he, the way he sang it just like really touched me. And I think you kind of understand this. Like if you have, in Hebrew, the word for it is like a chush. If you have like a deep feeling for music, when you hear something and it touches you deeply, you're able to sort of, like I immediately knew that I could do that. And, I started doing it. I started singing that song and playing the drum or whatever. And in Atlanta on Halloween, I really bugged out. I had like a really bad trip and I got real paranoid. And I thought I was being followed around the arena. I lost my shoes, it was like, I was 17 years old or whatever. And I come out of the arena and I found my drum. And I go into a parking lot, like a closed parking lot. And I see some kid that I had met in Vermont or somewhere along the road who had heard me sing the Rastaman chant. And we started drumming and I started singing it. And, I was tripping. So, you don't know exactly what's distorted in reality. But in my mind, I became Matisyahu. Like in that moment, I became literally, there were hundreds and hundreds of people that came and packed it out and people spitting fire. And it was this fucking carnival. And I was at the center of it, and at that moment, I realized I was like, I have the, somehow I felt like I had the magic. You know what I meant?
Okay, and you started out as MC Truth.
Yes, in Oregon, yeah. So then I go to Bend, Oregon. I end up on a wilderness treatment program for kind of wild kids. I'm 17. I come back from Fish Tour with a handful of issues, from scabies to, quaddies, which are flying lice that fly out of your dreadlocks. The scene of me coming home from tour is pretty fucking hilarious because I'm sick and I got mono and I've been in the backseat of a car for like 4 days. I haven't eaten because I can't get anything down. And I go to the hospital and they assume I have bronchitis. They give me the wrong medication. At some point, they're like, you got to call your parents, dude. And I call and my mom is like, where are you? And I'm like, we're on the way to this show. She's like, they can drop you at this airport, have them drop you off. She gets me a ticket. The only ticket she could get was a first class ticket. I had never flown first class in my life. She buys the ticket. I walk onto the plane in those days before 9/11. This is in the 90, this is like 98 or 96, no, 97. No shoes and a drum and just a mess, And I get off the plane, I come home and I can barely put a sentence together, and I was like that for a little while. I was pretty spun out and went to like Arms Acres. I went to like a rehab. Eventually, I tried to go back to high school and that didn't make sense. So my mom was like, yo, you want to go on like Outward Bound? And I'm like, yeah, of course, I would love to. And then, I go out onto this wilderness trip and they're taking your shoelaces away. And I'm like, this isn't Outward Bound. Yeah. And basically you have to hike in silence in the desert for like 3 weeks, and you do these like vision quest things where you sit in one place for 3 days, like the size of this rug. in the middle of the woods. You can't see or hear anybody, and you just kind of bug out. And so I did that a couple times, and then ended up in Bend, Oregon, in like a year-long program. And that's when I started performing and doing music. And there was like an open mic night. It was mostly like cowboys at that time in Bend, Oregon. It was still before everyone came up from California and stuff. And there was a kid that I met in town who had dreadlocks, played guitar and freestyle rapped and played the drum. Me and him connected right away, and we started doing this thing, Mystical Truth, and we'd go to the open mic night and we would just bug out. And then they just decided to give us our own night. So we would take like mushroom tea, and I would wear like flags, and we would come from the back with like sage burning, and then we would just like bring our friends on stage and bug out. And that's kind of how I started performing. Yeah.
Okay, so you come back to New York and you go to the new school.
Yeah.
And around that time, you started going to an Orthodox Jewish synagogue?
Well, first of all, I know you come from like a lot of hip hop background and stuff. So that is like, school is right next to Fat Beats on 8th Street. It's the time of Lyricist Lounge, Raucous Records, you know, The Roots, Black Star. I saw like at Tramps, I saw Common with The Roots backing him up, and I saw like this dude Kenny Muhammad beatbox, and that really kind of like changed me because I was into reggae music and I was into jam band like Fish, you know, but all my friends listened to hip hop growing up and stuff, but I hadn't really gotten into it until that time. So first I would say I started like in college there for a couple of years. And then at some point I started to really get more interested in Judaism. I really wanted to dive deeper into it. And so I started just going around to different synagogues just by myself. I would just check out different places. It didn't matter to me if it was Orthodox or Hasidic or Reform or whatever it was. I was just like reading books and just diving into it. And for some reason, I felt like my identity became very, very important to me to figure out who I am. And I figured as being a Jew and having this kind of spiritual kind of tilt to the way I see things, I just was like, you know, I'm just going to explore that as much as I can. And I'm the type to go kind of all the way with things. So when I found certain things to be authentic and certain things not to be, and I automatically shy away from the things I feel aren't real, and that brought me into that Hasidic world.
Okay, so it was after 9/11 that you decided to actually
Yes.
go full-blown Hasidic?
Yeah, 9/11, my grandmother was sick in Florida, Lil, and it's right before Rosh Hashanah, and I had started getting interested in Orthodox Judaism. I went one day, I told my cousin to drop me off at the Orthodox shul in White Plains instead of like the shul that I grew up at, because I wanted to go on Friday night. I got there, young Israel, there were 3 brothers that came in late. These guys were like a mess. And everybody left, and they started doing their own prayer service. And it was, what I found out later was it was Shlomo Carlebach's prayers, his music, who he was a musician and a rabbi who had a place on the Upper West Side, still does, a shul there. And anyway, so I met these guys and I started hanging out with them. And there were 3 brothers that did music. They had a band called Pei Dalet. And I would go around with them to like different like little events that were like Orthodox events, and I would rap and play percussion, and sing harmonies like in their band. What happened? Why was I going on about that?
What made you go fully Hasidic? Because that is very different from regular Judaism.
Yeah. I know what it was. They were singing the Shlomo Carlebach song, so I started going to that synagogue, and that's sort of not fully Hasidic. It's kind of hippie Hasidic. It's like, you know, it kind of worked with me. I could see like even the look, the tzitzis, the whole vibe. I was like, I could get into this, and the prayer was really, really special. It's a small synagogue. The melodies that they used, I started reading about him and the character that he was. So I started getting into that. Then eventually, I got into Chabad. I met a Chabad guy. Basically, I felt at that point that I wasn't changing. Like there was something about who I was that I wanted to change. Like I wanted to become something like a crazy version of myself that would be Matisyahu, basically, you know? Not just on the outside Hasidic, but someone who's really connected with God, who's really on this spiritual, quest, and really became important to me. And I started to feel this deep connection to it in a lot of ways. One of them, because I loved reggae music so much and I was so connected to reggae, so I started to take apart all the lyrics, and you see it's all Old Testament. It's all from the Torah. And so that helped me like connect with the Jewish thing, because I'm like, it gave me a perspective on it that I hadn't had before, and coming at it from the music side as a Jew, it made sense to me, and so that was kind of like the initial stages of it all. But yeah, then I realized at some point that I wasn't really changing the way enough that I really wanted to from the inside. And I felt I had to do something drastic. And that's when I went Hasidic. Basically, that meant no sex, no girls, no glasses when you walk down the street, learning Torah 14, 16 hours a day, living in a basement in Crown Heights, just crazy customs that weren't natural to me that I just went through. I mean, a complete for 2 years, just a complete going into it, coming out the other side different, and married, started having kids, and I was in Crown Heights for 10 years, but that first few years, was a very intense time. And I was looking to really shift, who I was.
Okay, well, I lived in Borough Park in Brooklyn for a couple of years.
I was there all the time. My voice teacher was in Borough Park, so I used to ride my bicycle from Crown Heights to Borough Park.
Yeah, I lived across the street from one of the major synagogues, and my whole building was fully Hasidic. I was the only non-Hasidic person really in the whole area. And, listen, I'm Jewish, but being a Hasidic Jew is very different. And I'll be honest, I haven't always been a big fan of Hasidic Jews.
Especially if you grew up around them.
No offense, but yeah. I'm just being honest here since this is a real interview.
Yeah.
Number one, Hasidic Jews don't believe in Israel, right?
Some of them, a very small group, but yeah.
Right, because a certain number of Hasidic Jews feel that there should only be a Jewish homeland when the Messiah comes back. And since the Messiah hasn't come back, there should not be a Jewish homeland, so there shouldn't be in Israel.
Right.
There's that part.
And a lot of them live in Israel.
Yeah, and they live in Israel thinking this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's very much, living there amongst those people. I mean, they're relatively nice, but nobody ever talked to me. No one embraced me on any level. They knew that I was probably Jewish, but I definitely was not a Hasidic Jew. Being out in public, Hasidic Jews really, from my perspective, they don't really care about being polite to people outside of themselves.
No.
So, I remember once I was at an airport and there was a Hasidic Jewish couple and there was about a 6-year-old boy screaming his head off. The father was there, just did not care.
Yeah.
Did not care how many people were being bothered. And sometimes you see in the business practices, they don't really seem to care about laws and following the rules as long as it benefits their own community,
Mm-hmm.
So, there's situations like at B&H where non-Hasidic Jews were treated very badly. There was a big lawsuit at one point. I actually decided in my company that we're going to stop shopping at B&H because of some of these reasons. Wow. Like I said, no offense to you, but I feel this is something that should be discussed because of your background in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when I say these things, am I out of line or am I accurate in some of these assumptions?
You're completely...
Some of these, not assumptions, but my observations.
I think you're completely accurate. I mean, at one point, look, I mean, for me, it wasn't so much about the community, about all of that. It was kind of like going on this inner journey, and I was embracing all of the Hasidic lifestyle, but there were certain things that always just didn't sit right with me. They never felt comfortable, and eventually, when I moved through it, 10, 12 years later, I was like, all right, this is a big part of the things. I mean, the culture. I'll give you an example. I was in Mezebush. It's in the Ukraine. It's where the Baal Shem Tov, who's the original Hasidic master, comes from. You go to his kever, it's his grave site. It's beautiful, right? It's in farmland. And, I was there with my teacher, my mentor, someone that I wrote lyrics with and came up with ideas for songs and stuff. And we would do meditations, study Torah together, meditate. And we were learning a lot of the Baal Shem Tov's Chassidus, his teachings. So we went there and we just posted up, right? Gorgeous place, like the most, all of a sudden, busloads of Hasidim show up that they come every year for this event, like, for some event. And within 3 minutes, like, we were thrown out of the house we were staying in, and it felt like Borough Park. People were smoking cigarettes, throwing shit, yelling at each other. There's fucking food everywhere. It's like, I get it. If you're coming from the outside looking in and you're looking in at these people, you're going like, these people, and especially if you grew up around it, and for sure they weren't warm or welcoming or bringing you in. I think, there's different Hasidim, there's different groups. Potentially, had you grown up in Crown Heights with Chabad, they would have been asking if you were Jewish. If they found out you were Jewish, then they would have tried to bring you in. Once you got brought in like me, then they would have said, fucking fend for yourself. So there's a lot of backward shit. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on. But there was something to me that was very attractive about it. It wasn't any of that stuff. It was something else. And I do think that it is multidimensional, that there is another side to it that can be very, very beautiful and insane and everything. But, like Shul, for example, I was thinking this, because it's Rosh Hashanah basically tonight. And I'm going to the studio with like the Jewish member from Wu-Tang Clan, Remedy. Do you know Remedy?
Yeah, I know that.
From Killer Bees, yeah. So he had a song called Never Again that I remember listening to and having a real big influence on me and realizing that I could be Jewish and do rap music or reggae music. And there were a couple artists like that, but that one song just hit at a time when it was just right there for me. So we're connecting. We're going in the studio, and I was thinking, well, I'm not going to go to shul. I'm going to go in the studio. I was doing this whole back and forth in my head, like, the two sides. You should go to synagogue on Rosh Hashanah. We're going to the studio. Oh, it's Rosh Hashanah. There's a special energy. I'll get something good in the studio. I'll get some of the magic of Rosh Hashanah. Why should I go to shul? I spent enough time in shul. You know how many hours and hours and hours and hours I spent in synagogue. That kind of thing. But then I think about the synagogue that I hung out in sometimes, this place was insane, 770 Eastern Parkway. I mean, it wasn't a synagogue like you or me may have grown up going to at a Reform synagogue. I mean, this is basically the boiler room and the convention center of everything that happens, There's people fighting, there's people eating, there's people dancing, there's people praying, there's a million different prayer groups going on at once. People praying in the closets, people praying all different types of places. And to me, that chaos sort of felt very attractive. I liked it. It just felt authentic to me,
I think one of the most interesting things that I found in terms of living in a Hasidic community is that men and women who aren't married can't touch at all. You cannot shake hands with a woman. I remember there was a woman in my building. Hi, my name's Vlad. I put my hand out. She's like, I can't shake your hand. I'm religious.
Yeah.
And I remember I went to Israel with my lady, and as I was coming back on El Al Airlines, we had, a window. We had two seats, and there was a Hasidic Jewish guy who sat on the third row. Right, we're flying coach. I have the window seat. My lady's in the middle. She's small. And the third guy is a Hasidic Jewish guy, who doesn't speak English. So he calls a guy over to us, and they're like, listen, could you switch seats with your lady because he can't sit next to a woman? And I said, absolutely not. I'm not going to sit in the middle seat from Israel to New York because you can't afford a first-class ticket. No. 3 more people approached me with the same thing to the point where I started getting angry and started almost yelling like, yo, like, leave me alone. I'm not going to switch my seats.
Yeah.
Like, yo, like, this is not my problem. This is your problem right now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit in the middle seat because of your religious views. Like, this is insane. But he was adamant that I should move my seat for him. And he saw absolutely nothing wrong with it. This is what I'm saying, how dealing with outside society
basically they abandon all rules except their rules, and they have mad rules. They've got thousands of rules, and they're very intense rules, so minute to the detail of what fingernail you cut first on your hands. I mean, down to what sock you put on first. I mean, and therefore any other rules that aren't those rules, that aren't God's rules, you know, fuck them. And that's the problem with religion in general. If you look at any religion, basically, you know, any religion that puts their ideas on top of humanity, on top of things that we know to be true or false, you know. So that was a big problem for me, you know, as well. You know, I used to, I remember one time I was very religious, you know, I was putting tefillin on. This is after 9/11. People were a little shook, and I was putting the black boxes, the tefillin with the leather straps. I have to pray. You know, I'm running to a show or something. I don't have time. I'm doing it on the plane, and you have to, you know, stand up. You're not supposed to be sitting when you do that, you know? So I'm standing up. There's fucking turbulence. And it's Shmona Esrei. You're not allowed, under no circumstances are you allowed to talk to anybody, or if someone, and sure enough, the stewardess comes out, she's freaked out. She's like, you're scaring people on the plane. You have to sit down, sir. And I'm like trying to pray and fucking ignore her. And the cop, you know, at the end, I got off the flight, and, you know, the cops, you know, they were there. You know, they were like, I was praying. They were understanding. But at the same time, you know, years later, I decided I'm gonna go to shul, and during the prayers, because I still like going to shul and I still like to pray, but I don't believe in a lot of this bullshit, I'm gonna walk around synagogue, because I know it all by heart, and just say the words without a prayer book and without standing in place. And people would go crazy. They would start losing it. Then I got to the point where my yarmulke kept falling off my head, and so I stopped wearing a yarmulke. This is in a Hasidic shul. And I'm walking around during Shmona Esrei saying the words, and people would be throwing yarmulkes at me or trying to tackle me. I one time choked somebody out with my tefillin straps. I mean, I completely snapped and lost my shit. You know, so I totally understand, you know, those people can drive you crazy. But, you know, you can't say I wasn't one of them at one point, because I was pretty deep into it.
Well, if you said you were married when you first became a Hasidic Jew, then that means it was an arranged marriage.
It wasn't arranged, but it was 3 dates. It was 3 dates. So basically,
almost arranged.
I started doing my shows. I started playing a little bit, and I would get permission to leave the yeshiva. I would go to Southpaw, or there was a place on the Upper West Side called McCore, and I would get like little gigs here and there. And that was the thing, though. As they started picking you up, the rabbi was just like, you got to get married. You got to be married. That's the thing that's going to keep you grounded. And so I was like, I was very hungry to start my career, and it was starting, whether I wanted it or not. It was happening. And so, yeah, I just, I dated one person. I knew she wasn't it on the first date. They set me up. Then they set me up with another one. And we had 3 dates, and then I asked her to marry me, and that was it. You know, we had a baby probably within the year. Yeah.
The whole thing they say
we're
about
not
the
married. We're not married anymore. We're not married anymore, by the way.
You're not married.
Hugest
but the whole
mistake.
thing about Hasidic Jews, some of them have sex with a white sheet with a hole in the middle. Is there any truth in this?
Nah, that is, you know what that is? That's the tzitzis. Okay, so you know how they have the strings?
Yeah.
So that garment, right? It's a garment that's got to be 4 corners, so it can't have a middle like a shirt. So if you see it when it's hanging on the line, it looks like a white sheet with a big circle in the middle.
Oh.
I think that's where that rumor came from. There's no such thing that I've ever heard as sex between sheets.
Okay.
But there is rules about sex.
Yeah.
Like you can't eat pussy, no fucking way.
Really?
No fucking way. And they're not supposed, you know, there's not supposed to be oral sex. It's supposed to be missionary. It's supposed to, you know, there's rule. They bend the rules. You know, these motherfuckers know how to bend the rules. I mean, this is what they were doing for thousands of years, was just studying shit and figuring out how to twist the law. So that's why they're fucking good at it, you know? So there's ways to bend the rules, you know, but.
Well, and your wife at the time, she shaved her head and wore a wig?
She didn't shave her head, but she wore a wig, yeah.
Okay. But a lot of women do shave their heads. And wear
wigs.
And
and especially in those really deep, like ultra-Orthodox circles, like in Satmar and Williamsburg and in Borough Park, some of those places, you know, they shave their heads, they wear a wig. I mean, but it's miserable for both sides. Like, Try walking around New York City with a black fucking suit and a hat on and a big ass beard in July, you know. That was, you know, I was often miserable just because of the heat, you know, or the uncomfortability. Yeah.
Yeah, man, listen, Hasidic Jews are a breed all their own. You know, but you're the first person that I've actually been able to actually talk to about this who came from that.
What's
you know, and actually lived it.
what's upsetting is that growing up, people weren't cool to you. That's really beyond, you know, because the Jewish religion and the whole thing of the mitzvahs, you know, these people are obsessed about mitzvahs. The whole purpose of it, you know, and it didn't take Jesus to say that or Christianity. I mean, that's still a very Jewish idea, is to fucking be nice to people and to welcome people and to make people feel good. That's the whole fucking mission, you know, and it's upsetting that they, you know, fucking miss that, you know, and just, you know, glance over or look over or don't care, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So as you're part of this Hasidic community, you start taking music more seriously. And, you know, you used to rap before, but now you're going full blown reggae.
Yeah, I started doing reggae from the beginning too, though. I was always into rap and reggae, both. And part of the reason I love reggae was because it was melodic rap. At the time, there was not much of that. There was like Bone Thugs, you know, and Harmony and Warren G, you know. And as a singer, but with someone who's very rhythmic, you know, and grew up around rap, I was drawn to that style more of melodic rap. And really the only ones who did that were dancehall artists. And now I had a love for reggae music. My cousins are Bayesian from my mom. My mom's has two sisters. They're from Queens. One of them went to Barbados, married a man, and my first cousins grew up in Barbados. He was the first bar mitzvah of like the century and the oldest synagogue in the hemisphere. And they'd come for summer camp with early dance hall stuff like Super Cat and just like early stuff. And I loved it. You know, I listened to it all summer. And then when I started listening to, on my own, like that era of conscious dance hall, Sizzla, Buju Banton, Capleton, and hearing all of the biblical references, the spiritual ideas, you know, mixed with the biblical references, it just fit for me. And I started basically, that's all I listened to for a while. So in like my first year, let's say, or two of college, was like all the Sizzla albums. That was my guy, Sizzla. And I had worked at Borders. I got myself a PA system with like a microphone and an amp and a mixer. And I had like a little delayed thing because I would do beatboxing and fuck around with that. I had a drum kit and I had to set up, and I would get tapes on Canal Street of instrumental. It was all hip hop. There wasn't really instrumental reggae that I had found. It was like the first Dre album, Dr. Dre album, or like, you know, just different hip hop that was instrumental tapes. And I would play them and I would rap into my fucking microphone and do, you know, I would write and sing and do that thing. And no one had heard me do that really for like about a year. Prior to that, I had performed quite a bit on stage in Oregon and stuff like that at Seattle Hemp Festival or little clubs. I had started booking shows. I had put a band together and we started doing shit. And but so for a couple of years, I was just by myself, just doing that. And then the moment that I did it in front of people after that time, it was like motherfuckers would lose their shit. They would lose it. And that was before I was Hasidic, you know. That was just looking kind of, you know, a younger version like I look now. Yeah, it was something new. It was something different, like spitting out at that register that fast with that much power and it sounding authentic. It just it would flip people. It would fuck people up. They would just automatically. I would do it at like open mic nights at like the Lion's Den or something. There'd be a band. I would have them play No Woman No Cry. I would sing it money like Bob Marley, like money, and people would be like fuck. And then second verse would come, and I would flip my own like Sizzla type verse over it, and people would if there was anyone, you know, in the room that worked in the industry would try to sign me like immediately.
Well, when you start performing reggae, you know, in the style of reggae, that's not what your regular speaking voice is like.
No, and I can't even speak that way. I've never even tried to. It's completely a musical thing for me.
I mean, what do you say to people that say that you're having a black scent?
I would
You
say
know, when you perform that.
I would say they have a Jew scent because they took that shit from my Torah. That's where it starts, and that's what they'll tell you too. It's happened to me before. I was in Amherst. It was all Jamaicans. It was a reggae show. I was just starting out. No one knew who I was before Kimmel or anything. Full Hasidic. Watching the show. I asked if I could sit in. I do. I fucking tore it down. Everyone loved it. Couple of people had a problem with it. This one bitch walks over. She's like, you know, what do you know about Selassie? And the OG Rasta with the cane comes over and he goes, he knows from King David. You know, it's fucking facts. It's the way the shit is. That's where they got their shit from. They got it from the Jews, just like every other fucking religion, you know? And then they were, you know, and then a young kid in White Plains, New York, you know, however many years later, sees them doing it and all of a sudden understands his own identity because of it. That's the way shit works, you know? And some people are too narrow-minded to see beyond their own scope of shit. And that's why I've always had mad confidence. And all the reggae artists I've ever worked with have always been cool, except for one motherfucker who's a nut, who's just insane.
Who is that?
What's his name? Bang bang biddy bang bang biddy bang 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 bang. It was a big ganja smuggling session.
Ika Mouse.
Yeah, he's a fucking nutbag. Well,
Okay,
he called Bob Marley
so-
white. He said the reason why Bob Marley was successful was because his father was white. So,
Okay.
you know, he's obviously nuts.
Okay, so you end up getting signed to J-Dub Records.
Yeah.
And this is an independent record label.
Yeah, they weren't even a label. They didn't even have distribution. There was it was a Jewish kid who got funding, who went to music business school at NYU, got funding to start a Jewish record label, and they signed me as their first artist.
Okay, and you release your first album, Shake Off the Dust.
Yeah, a guy who worked at Raucous in the office, Orthodox Jew, afraid to wear his yarmulke to work, sees me performing it in Chelsea Shul, like my first time performing, like happens to come walk by or something. And so I start making a record with him in this Israeli ex-rock drummers, Dumbo, before Dumbo was the Dumbo it is today, loft on Fridays, because Fridays was the one day off that we had where I would go around the city with Shabbos candles and tefillin, ask people, are you Jewish? Put tefillin on people, go to the hospital, visit some, you know, kid, put tefillin on them. I had like a whole route of stores I would stop in where Jews worked there, and I would go. So that was one of the first things I got permission to give that route to somebody and start going to record this very first record, Shake Off the Dust. And, you know, that decision to make that record as a roots reggae record was kind of a joint decision. It was like, you know, they wanted to make a roots reggae record because they saw the connection with the Old Testament there, and so I did, because I love the roots reggae, but that wasn't, you know, really the style of what I was doing at the time. And then eventually the actual label, the guy that signed me and I got upstream to Epic, he knew that and recorded a live album with me on tour in one night, and that album is the one that blew up.
Right, that second album is Youth.
The second album is Youth after Live at Stubbs. First one is Shake Off the Dust.
Right, okay. So the second album gets picked up by Epic, so now you have a major distribution company, major label behind your project.
Yeah.
And that album had King Without a Crown.
Correct.
Which is one of your biggest songs.
Correct. Yeah.
And I believe that album was like the #1 digital album on Billboard?
Probably.
Okay. So how does it feel to go from being a Hasidic Jewish kid who is doing music, you know, kind of on the side, you know, from his regular studies, to suddenly having a major label album that's charting and actually reacting with a big song and so forth?
Well, it was like almost like what you would say overnight success, but it didn't feel like it, right? Because from the time I took acid at that Fish show, I knew I was going to do this. I knew I was going to do music. And even when I was deep inside the Hasidic thing, I was like, I would go up to the roof and I would listen to this one CD of this Hasidic music and sometimes I would write and I would have ideas about music and what I could do. And eventually I decided, okay, I got to let go of it because it's sort of like my idol. It's like my idolatry. It's like the thing that I'm putting at the top. And when I did that, it just started to flow to me. So basically, you know, I did a performance in Union Square, menorah lighting. There happened to be like a TV camera there from some news thing that was filming something else. They caught that. CNN saw that, interviewed me. The Steve Harvey show saw that. The Jimmy Kimmel show saw that. You know what I'm saying? And then it was just, and all of that is happening over months and months. Meanwhile, I buy a 15-passenger van. I'm on the road, driving, schlepping gear. We're playing shows, you know, 5-6 nights a week. And that's going on for about a year, you know, as things are ramping up. But you're seeing this success. Like, you're seeing all of a sudden now you're on the radio, like you said. We're supposed to play a show for 300 people. They then put us in the big room for 3,000 people. And now we're in the parking lot because there's 13,000 people there. We don't have a tour manager, a sound guy. You know, the guitar pedals go out, second song, and now that's it. We're playing with drums, bass, and guitar for 13,000 people in a parking lot. I mean, there was moments like that, like these crazy moments. And then crazy shit, you know, happened. Like Bonnaroo, I got the Bonnaroo thing. So then Friday night, I go to the rabbi, Chabad in Tennessee. I'm there. My manager says, come back, you know, keep your phone on Saturday night, turn it on right away. I might have a surprise for you. I turn on the phone like an hour late because I'm learning Hasidus with the rabbi. I'm so into it, I don't really care. I get a message, Trey wants to meet me from Fish, the lead guitar player from Fish, you know? So I run to the scene, I get there, I meet him, and eventually now I find myself on stage singing No Woman, No Cry, like in front of 50,000 people with Trey, you know? This trip is coming, it's coming true. You know, and it didn't happen in a way I could have planned it. You know, I totally had to lose it in order to get it. You know, that was always an idea for me that I felt.
Well, right, because visually it was kind of crazy. You got a white Hasidic Jewish kid doing reggae with songs that are actually reacting, and now you're doing these big shows with other reggae artists. Like I said, I was seeing the posters all around Brooklyn. It'd be like Beanie Man and Matisyahu right next to each other. You know, on the poster, I'm like, God damn, like this is wild.
One of those
and you're
for you, by the way.
Hasidic in the picture. So
I got one of those for you. I'm gonna send it to you if you want.
I want to get one. Yeah, I want to get one. Well, because outside of that, you were named the top reggae artist by Billboard.
Yeah.
You became a spokesman for Kenneth Cole.
All kinds of shit. You know, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. You opened up for Sting in Israel.
Yeah. I sang Roxanne with Sting in a soccer stadium in Israel. Wow. That was crazy.
Wow. And you opened up for Dave Matthews Band for a bunch of shows.
Yeah.
So, like you said, things are overnight blowing up exponentially.
Now it's huge. I've dropped the manager. I hired like a big manager, you know, and now I'm just trying to just stay. At that time, it wasn't really about recording music for me, you know. It was like about shows and just playing as many shows. I don't know if that was my idea or whose idea that was, but it probably had a lot to do with me. I mean, coming from the live music scene and that's where I was making most of my bread, you know, and being a bit of a workaholic, and my relationship at home didn't feel right, and so I was on the road a lot. So for several years, you know, I was on the road, you know, 250 plus days a year, maybe 300 days a year sometimes. And I had little kids, so I'm juggling, you know, being a dad, little kids, 3 little boys, you know, figuring out that this manager sucks and this manager sucks, and trying to figure out, you know, maneuvering through the industry and all that. And then at the same time, you know, having my own questions about the religion and all of that, going through my own sort of journey and you know, started taking psychedelics again and questioning things and going to therapy and trying to untie a bunch of knots and doing all that in front of people, you know, where you mean something to them, you know, and not thinking, you know, what it means to people, just doing my thing. So, you know, I would get really into improvisation. I didn't want to play my hit songs, you know. I would change all the songs. I would improvise and play for hours. I would watch hundreds of people leave my shows knowing that they would never come back, you know, and I had this attitude like, fuck them. You know, I don't know, maybe it was a little cocky or stupid, but some you know, it took me a long time to figure out how to do this and be happy and all that, you know.
Well, at one point, you do get back to the studio and you put together the song One Day.
Yeah.
And Bruno Mars was one of the producers on that song?
Writer and producers on it, yeah.
And this was before Bruno Mars blew up as a artist himself.
He couldn't get a record deal. He was yelling at me in the studio. He's like, how the fuck did you get a record deal, Matis? I mean, he was literally going, he would leave the studio to go play for like a bunch of people so at some label, and then he would come back all pissed off, you know, and they didn't get it. They didn't see him as a star, you know, that even though he had like hit after hit, he had been writing already, you know. But yeah, I mean, I worked on a record in those days. So my manager, you know, I remember, I'll never forget him saying this, you have to go away. That was the idea, right? In today's day and age, that's just career suicide. You think about like, you know, not being relevant, not putting music out, not being current and continuing. The idea was, you know, go take some time, go make a really deep record, take 2 years, take 3 years, you know, and I did. And, you know, it sucked because I came back, I had this album, I'd worked with this dude, David Kahn, who's known for kind of being real overproducing and spending a lot of time on things. And I worked with him every day in his basement, you know, and we made this record and we handed it in. And at that time, you know, all the labels were scrambling, trying to figure out how they were going to make money, what they were going to do. They hired this woman, Amanda Ghost, a hit writer from the UK. And she was like, there's no hits on this album. You know, you got to go make a hit. And I was totally cool with that. I was like, fine. You know, I've been on tour with this dude named Kanon from Canada. And he has this song called Waving Flag, which later got picked up by the World Cup, which is funny because One Day got picked up by the Olympics and he got picked up by World Cup. And I had asked him who produced it for him because he had played it for me on tour and he mentioned these guys. So when she said she wanted me to do a hit, I said, okay, I want to go record with the guy who produced this song for Kanon. And she goes, just so happens the A&R I brought in is their manager on a plane the next day to LA and working with Bruno and one other guy. And we wrote One Day. You know, it's just kind of like, this is the song, this is what we want, this is the goal. And that's what Bruno is, you know, he's incredible. I've never seen anyone just be like, take a style and just be like, okay, this is the song from this style that you're trying to kind of, you know, create your own version of it. Boom, here it is. You know, it's just, he'll deliver that.
Yeah, that's actually my favorite song by you.
Well, there you go.
One Day. Yeah.
It's a lot of people's favorite songs.
Yeah, no. I feel, you know, I understand like Live Like a Warrior is probably a bigger song numbers wise, but that to me is my favorite song.
Oh, no. One Day is by far the biggest song. Yeah, more than Sunshine or Live Like a Warrior. That's the biggest one.
Okay, and that song kind of became a theme song for like pro-Israel rallies over time.
It became a theme song for a lot of things. I mean, it's a song, they use it in the liturgy, in prayer, in synagogues. They use it at every summer camp. They use it at fundraisers all over. They use it for sure. I'm sure that a lot of pro-Israel people use it. It's been used, Arabs and Jews singing together. People put it in commercials. It gets used in a lot of athletics, sports stuff, the French Open, you know, video games, FIFA, soccer game. I mean, that song is kind of like, you know, we wrote it to be this massive anthem, this peace song, and it was, and it never did well on radio. It failed on radio. I went from radio station to radio station for 8 months to pop stations after having already a hit at alt rock or whatever, and people had no idea who I was, and I went, and it didn't research well, and they dropped it, and they dropped me, and then the song, you know, over time, it's one of those songs that just snowballs. It gets bigger and bigger. So it's a true hit, you know? Yeah,
no, I agree. And Akon actually jumped on the remix, and Akon is Muslim. Me and Akon go way back. That's my man.
Yeah.
But I think that was dope to have a Jew and a Muslim on a big song like that.
Yeah, I mean, no one listens to that version. They spent like $100,000 without asking me, and they just like, all right, we need a big star to do it. But that's not the version that did well. So I love, I never spoke with it. I think I spoke with him once on the phone. He was super cool. I love the concept, a Jew and a Muslim doing something together. It should be done. But I wish I hadn't had to pay for it. Because that's not the song that blew up,
Yeah, I mean, Akon was on fire during that time, so I could see
Yeah.
why 100,000 makes sense to him.
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, that is the price. I'm just like, it's just like the label being stupid. Like, oh, we need to get someone to make the song big when, the song is big as it is.
Right. And that came out on your third album, Light.
Yeah. Light. Yeah.
Okay, so Light comes out in 2009. You're around 30 at the time. By 2011, age 32, you announced that you're shaving off your beard and no more Hasidic reggae superstar.
Yeah.
Which was interesting because if you think about it visually, that was your whole thing up to this point. You're the Hasidic Jewish guy who's doing reggae.
Yeah.
And suddenly you lose that whole image. Was that a hard decision to make?
Not because of that, because that was irrelevant to me. Like the appearance aspect of it was never an important thing to me. Even though it might have been very important to other people, it might have been a part of the whole thing for people. For me, it was this, I've always been whatever I was into, even as a kid, that's the way I express myself, and I take on the full look. I take on the full thing. If I'm in synagogue for 12 hours a day, then I'm taking on the look too. I'm taking on everything. And that was my thing because that's who I was. And at some point inside started to change. Like I said, I started asking lots of questions, started having different ideas and different fantasies about leaving it and fears and all kinds of things. And at some point, all those knots came undone. And I was like, oh shit, I'm me again. And I literally walked into a Supercuts on the Upper West Side and I had him shave my beard and my payas, and I was fucking crying, it was 10 years. I could see my face again, and I was living at my voice teacher on the Upper West Side, this humble dude, older guy, older gentleman. And I had a cyst on my vocal cord. So that was a big deal for me because I was gonna have to get surgery. So we were working every day in his apartment, 11, 10 sessions a day, short 15-minute sessions to try to get rid of it without surgery, which we did. But I had to be on complete vocal silence. I had a stomach issue, so I was macrobiotic. I was like 165 pounds at the time. I'm like 200 now. So you get, I was in this interesting place where I was struggling and I was going through a lot, but I was doing it. I was like doing the work, and everything started to just I just felt I don't need the religion anymore. I don't need the rules. Like I'm now getting the thing that I was looking for the whole time from the beginning. And now that I have it, I can let go of all the other shit. And I couldn't really explain that to anyone, and I didn't even really care to, because at that stage of my life, that's where I was at. I kind of felt like I had done the thing. I was still gonna do it for whoever, gave a shit, and it didn't really matter to me. The quest for the big hit or whatever is always there, but it wasn't the driving force for me at that point. And I was on Twitter. It was right when the internet started, so there was no protection yet. I didn't know about comments and peep trolls and all that shit. Like in the early days, you just jumped in and you were in there, and I saw someone quoted a lyric of mine that I had written that a lot of my lyrics sometimes, like I wouldn't understand what the lyric means, but in the future it will happen. Like, and this one is like, when the time comes, I'll lose my disguise, was like the lyric. And I'm like, oh shit, I got a show tomorrow in Denver. No one's gonna fucking recognize me. I gotta show people that I shaved. I didn't have a publicist or consult the publicist or nothing, And I just went into the bathroom of my voice teacher, and it's like this weird tiles and like weird light. And I just took a picture and posted it. And a lot of people, I think, felt like, oh, wow, this dude is off the deep end. He must be on drugs or something, because I looked fucked up. But I was just You know, I was actually probably in the best place that I've ever been in my life, you know. So
Well, how did your rabbi and the Hasidic Jewish community that you had, so embedded yourself into take that?
different ways, but the majority of people felt that I had succumbed to the pressures of Hollywood and the music industry, and therefore I had abandoned my faith and all of it for shallow purposes. And people were really angry. And like I said, I was reading those comments and I'd fire back, and that began a very dark period for me until I was able to flip out of it. I mean, one experience I had in LA was there was a synagogue that I used to go to, like I said, and it was a place that I always felt comfortable in and loved. It was Hasidic, and there weren't a lot of people like me that went there at the time. And one time I'm there, and the rabbi's giving this fiery speech, and he keeps staring at me and looking at me, the strimal and the whole thing. And I don't speak Yiddish like that well, so I'm afterwards I asked someone to translate, and he goes, he's talking about trying to dress like a goy, trying to look like a non-Jew, because I was dressed in plain clothes, and he's going on about why do you want to make yourself look like them and all this kind of shit. And I left upset, and I think it was like 2 years later I came back, and now I have no beard, right? Then I had a beard but regular clothes, and he was freaking out. And I see the rabbi, I'm davening there, he runs over to me after synagogue, and he goes, I need you to come home with me. I live around the corner. You got to stop at my house. And I'm like, at that point, I'm used to telling rabbis to fuck off. And so I'm like, I'm like very guarded, and I'm like, hell no. And he's like, you don't understand. My wife is a huge fan. You have to come. You have to come. I get to the house. I find it. I go to the house. It's on the way. And I see like the TV is on. I walk inside. The wife is watching TV on Shabbos, but with the whole shtick, And she goes, she's freaking out. Matisyahu is in the house. And she goes, I need to take you for a walk. And I'm like, this is starting to get weird, So we go for a walk. And then she goes, my husband is an atheist. We don't believe in God at all. She's like, we come from this neighborhood in Borough Park. We never were taught how to open a bank account, how to read and write in English. They have a whole Facebook group of people that are afraid don't know how to transition into the world, come from this Hasidic world. Their families are going to leave them. Everyone, they're going to be left alone. They don't know what the fuck to do. They don't have diplomas or any skills. And he said, when you shaved your beard, it gave us all like this hope that maybe one day we'll be able to also. So, there's different ways in which it affected people in different ways, And that's what I came to realize later on was like, for my core fans that are mostly not even Jewish, just across the country or whatever, to them, it was a really powerful thing for a lot of people that have grown up within the, whether it's a different religion, Christianity or whatever it is, it was like a sign of sort of like coming out and of freedom, which that became a big part of what my, I guess what Matisyahu meant to me, at that time.
Well, by 2012, you put out your fourth album, Spark Seeker. And that had Live Like a Warrior, which is my second favorite song by you.
Thanks. Also not written by me. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, that song was delivered to me on a crazy thing because I write most of my music, but not music, but songs and lyrics. And that one and One Day are two of the ones that I did. And that one was given to me. You know who the artist Jack Knight is? Did you ever hear Jack Knight? From the
No, I'm not familiar.
From the like Harlem days, like the Diddy, like that whole camp. But he's a writer. He became a writer. He never, as an artist, he didn't really blow up, but he became a good writer. And someone gave me that song on a Saturday night. It was like after Rosh Hashanah. I remember I was on my way. I was playing at a Christian college, and I'd spent 3 days in some rabbi's house because I couldn't travel because it was 2 days of Rosh Hashanah plus Shabbos. And I remember that Saturday night, my manager sent me the song. And they're like, I know you don't take songs and you don't do this, but listen to this one. And I listened to it, and immediately I was like, I want that song. That song was written for me, Yeah.
So on that Spark Seeker album, you did 2 songs with Shyne.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, yeah.
And I remember me and Shyne were talking at one point. I think we're actually in Israel at the same time. We were trying to link up because remember when he got out of prison, he went
Yeah.
Hasidic Jewish.
Yeah.
with the side curls,
Full
beard,
Hasidic.
and the whole nine.
Full Hasidic. I saw that shit like in the New York Times, and I almost like choked on my coffee, because that was the first tune that I did. I did it at this thing, Arts on 3rd in Mount Vernon, on 3rd Street in Mount Vernon. And I played, I performed with a friend of mine, and I sang that hook over the, it's a Barrington Levy, sample. And that was like one key moment in my career, or like in my life, when I knew I had it, and I spit that, and the reaction of the crowd was insane. And I always remember when that came out. Then I see that, and I'm like, he's gone Hasidic. I hit him up right away. It was like the first, I called him that morning. I got in touch with him. Yeah, and then he kind of bugged out on me.
Well, yeah, you said he's a confusing dude.
Is that what I said? Yeah. I mean, he's dope. He showed up to the studio, and there was something about him. He seemed like he was like he had lived quite a life, out of jail and everything. And he was like cane and plastic bags, someone schlepping his bags, like full Hasidic plastic bags. Like a cane. He was like, I came all the way here for you, Matis. I'm like, it's 40-minute drive from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. What are you talking about, man? It seemed like he just walked across the desert and shit, just passed out in the studio, slept for like 4 hours, woke up. We put on the beat, just took off his bekisha, took off his hat, and just bodied that shit. Just bodied the mic. No writing, no nothing. And then was unhappy with the vocal. We did a lot to try to get the vocal loud, because his voice was kind of shredded. I don't know what happened in jail or whatever, but his voice was. So we did a lot of work, to try to get that vocal loud, and it wasn't loud enough for him. And then he took me off the tracks and released them on his album.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Wow, okay, because these days Shyne, I don't think is Jewish anymore.
Oh yeah? Is that what? I have no idea.
Well, he doesn't have a beard, side curls.
Oh, he left it? He's
definitely not Hasidic anymore. I don't know if religion-wise he's still that. I've never really had a conversation with him about that.
Yeah.
Because we did an interview, I believe, I think it might have been in Israel, because he was wearing the Hasidic gear.
Yeah.
During this, but
he was posted up at the King David Hotel for he had a floor at the hotel for a while. I think he had yeshiva. He was teaching. I think he was a rabbi. He had a whole crew of dudes that were like me, that were grew up in late 90s listening to hip hop, and now fucking Shyne is, and we all became Hasidic, and we're and now all of a sudden Shyne became Hasidic. You're there was he had followers,
Yeah, no, that was wild. I think I had the same reaction when I first saw the pictures. I was like, whoa, because me and him actually spoke while he was in prison.
Yeah.
We spoke on the phone. So yeah, seeing that was really left field. But I guess, he had his time, he had his moment, and, he moved on, and now he's doing, he's involved in the government in Belize. He's married, has kids.
Oh, cool.
I'm happy for him overall. I guess everyone has their own journey, try to figure out who they are and so forth. And coming out of prison, I'm sure there's a lot of confusion and a lot of trying to figure out what just happened, because from what I understand, and he spoke on this recently, he went to jail over a shooting that Diddy actually did, because Diddy had a gun as well, and the girl who got shot was saying that Diddy was the one that shot her. But when it came to the case, Diddy got their trial separated. Yeah. And I believe that Diddy actually testified against Shyne, which ended up getting Shyne a whole bunch of years, and
10
Diddy
years.
got probation.
He was in 10 years.
Shyne even said, this guy ruined my life.
Yeah,
but,
he was in prison for 10 years. But then if you talk to Jack Knight or some of the other people, they said he used to wild out. Shyne was I don't know. I have no idea what happened. Who knows? But but basically the idea, that's what everyone said.
Before even signing a record deal, he was out there.
Yeah, but everyone said that basically he did the time for Diddy. That was the known thing that everyone would say, he did it. But I don't know. But yeah, he crazy, man. But that's good because he comes from Belize, because he's his father is the prime minister of Belize.
Yeah, I asked him about this.
He's the illegitimate child.
Being the prime minister at one time.
Yeah. And then he came to, I guess they sent them away or something like that.
Well, he went to America to go live with his mother, I believe. And that was the whole thing, is that after he was convicted of the shooting and he did his time, he got, sent back.
He couldn't come back.
You can't, because I don't believe he was totally legal the whole time. So if you're not a full-blown U.S. citizen and you go and shoot somebody, you're going to get sent back to where you came from. Same thing's going to happen to Tory Lanez when he finishes off his prison term.
Sure.
He's going to get sent back to Canada.
Yeah.
You can't do that. I mean, and that's just not America. Go to Mexico as an American and shoot somebody. You think you could stay there in Mexico after that? Like, they'll send you back.
Yeah, sure.
I heard that you actually have 3 songs with NBA Youngboy?
Yeah, I do. I got, basically, a fan sent me like a clip to an interview he did where they asked him who he listens to, and he said 2 people, 50 Cent and Matisyahu. Yeah. And so I was like, what? So I reached out. I have kids, like, they know who he is. They know, the level that he's on. And yeah, I had to get permission, from the police, the government or whatever. And we arranged, I had a show in Utah. So we arranged for me to come the next day, I think the next 2 days, to his house. And I came to the crib, rolled up. It was a unique experience for me. I haven't really had an experience like that before. I was like, in an Uber with like a foreign Uber driver. We're like rolling up to the crib, and there's dudes with Uzis perched out, and it was crazy. His security force is insane. And then we roll in, and I just met him, and we chilled out, and we hung out for 2 days. We did 3 songs together.
Huh? Any interesting stories during the process of making those songs?
I would say, his talent level was crazy to me, like the way his voice is and the way that he, like, just his flow and his kind of approach to things, And then, there were other, he was obviously going through some things too, some things. So it was kind of ups and downs throughout the session. It was like moments where he was very present and like ready to rap on something. And then something would shift, and, we'd be like, where's he at? Kind of thing, And me and the engineer, Greenberg, we'd just be in the studio, just like working on something. And then he'd come back like mad excited about something we were working on. And then he spit on it. He spit like some crazy shit. And the hook of the song that we have together is, because we talked for a while. And I told him I had some drug issues at some point. So the hook is like, it goes like, no more cocaine, it's just me and my weed, me and my family. And then I sing that, and then he sings, no more champagne, it's just me and my lean, me and my family. That's like the hook on one of them. It's pretty fucking dope though. So I don't know, I'm waiting on him to see if he releases it, because he doesn't really, I don't think like deals get made, or like the label knows what he's releasing and how he's releasing it. So it gets released, like uploaded like hours before, So hopefully he'll put it out.
Okay, so these are his 3 songs, not yours.
I did them at his studio. So I think he would probably give them to me if he's not going to release them. So I haven't gotten to that stage yet. I'm just kind of waiting to see if he puts them out.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to it. Do you actually have copies of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. If you can
I got them, and they say
to me.
Basically,
I won't.
The engineer was like, he has never, in all of his years working with Youngboy has never let like the artist leave with the tracks, and he sent them to me. So I have them. They're dope as fuck. One of them is called House of My God. Like, I wrote for him because he was on house arrest. And it's called House of My God, and it's based on some King David Tehillim shit that I put in it. It's pretty fire.
After those recordings, he gets arrested and charged, I think, with like 65 cases of drug fraud, because he was essentially getting pills, allegedly, through pharmacies, using fake names, fake accents, girls he knows, and everything else like that. So he ended up settling his gun case, his federal gun case. I think he got 27 months for that, but he's still pending with the drug case.
Yeah.
Considering the time you guys spent together and talking about drug issues and so forth, when you found out about that, how'd you feel?
I was sad for him. I feel bad for him. I feel like he's incredibly talented individual, and like look what he could do. You know, put like 10 albums out in 1 year. I mean, he's like a unique. He's like, to me, he's almost like a Michael Jackson level of talent or something like that as a rapper. You know, his voice and just his approach. I've worked with a lot of artists, a lot of singers, a lot of rappers, but his kind of something about him that's just kind of magical. So I just feel it's sad. You know, it's tricky for artists. There's no book. There's no way to figure it out. You know, you got to figure it out yourself, and we make mistakes. You know, I hope he figures it out though. I hope he's gonna be okay.
Okay, so 2 years later, in 2014, you released your fifth album, Akeda.
Yeah.
Right around that time, the next year, you were actually supposed to perform at Sunsplash in Spain.
Yeah. Rotterdam, it's
And
called. Yeah, it was called Rotterdam Festival.
Rotterdam Sunsplash, right?
Yeah.
And before the festival, the people that put it together asked you to sign a paper saying that you were against Israel's occupation of Palestine.
Correct.
And you were the only person on that roster that was asked to sign anything.
Right. Correct.
When you were given that paper, what did you think?
Oh, I just like laughed, and I was like, called my agent. I'm like, they got to pay me either way, right? And he confirmed that I would get paid, and I'm like taking the fucking night off. I was on tour. I was tired. We were flying all over fucking Europe, and I think we were in Amsterdam or somewhere. And I was like, nope, I don't have to go to Spain. And I didn't say shit about it either. I was happy with the night off. And they're the ones that they posted about it, like patting themselves on the back. And then within 24 hours, the government was going to shut the fucking festival down. Backers were pulling out. They had to apologize, public apology, beg me to come back to the festival, which I did then go back and play. And then I had to play to a bunch of fucking BDS bastards that were trying to make a fucking triangle to block the other 30,000 people from seeing me. And that was my first experience with all this bullshit. And it was 10 years ago. And at the time, it was not cool. And now it's completely the norm. It's completely accepted. So, you know, that shows you things have changed.
Yeah, I mean, right now, the whole anti-Semitic thing is huge, unfortunately. I mean, but that was the first time you really experienced it on a big level like that?
Yeah, that was the first time I think that like any American Jewish artist, they came after you like that. I mean, because Israelis, that's been going on for years and years, you know, but an American Jew who simply supports Israel. So yeah, that was my first experience with it, really, I think.
You know, when Kanye went on the whole anti-Semitic rant, when he first said, DEF CON on Jews, and then went on to do a whole bunch of interviews about Jews need to forgive Hitler and get over it, and, how he's not talking about any particular Jews, but all Jews in general, and so forth and so forth. And ultimately, he ended up getting dropped by every corporation from Adidas to Gap to his work with Balenciaga, and I believe even his record label. How did you feel when all that was happening?
I just thought he was being crazy, and I don't usually pay much fucking attention to that shit because I have 6 kids, 3 dogs, a fucking career that I manage myself. I'm on the road 200 days a year. I just don't have fucking time to just really give a shit. So, I mean, people were telling me about it, and I just didn't really take it seriously. And then at some point, someone played a beat for me, and I was in a writing session, and I just started writing. And I wrote a rap like about anti-Semitism, and it was definitely inspired by the Kanye shit, what I had been hearing about it, and so it did inspire me in a way to write something a song I released called "Ascent." It's like the last song. I made a video in Israel for it. It's a pretty powerful video.
Well, you did an interview with the Cornell Sun, and you said, as far as I understand, there was never a country called Palestine.
Yeah. Did I say that? I don't know. When was this? But you know the history of the name Palestine, where it comes from.
Explain it to me.
That's probably what I was referring to. Basically, the British controlled Palestine. Prior to that, other empires. It was never its own. And in ancient times, that that entire name, it comes from a different place. It was Judea, Samaria. It was a Jewish homeland, like before anything, and later on, it was acquired by different empires and established. And I don't know exactly when, but at some point is where the name Palestine came up. Yeah.
All right. I mean, before the formation of Israel, that region was controlled by the British.
Correct.
And there were both Jews and Palestinians.
Jews and Arabs.
In that region.
Jews and Arabs living there. Yeah, Jews and Muslims.
Jews and Arabs.
Yeah.
And Muslims were living in the same region. There was a lot of conflict and so forth.
Yeah.
After World War II and the genocide that happened, the UN essentially gave it,
back to the
Jewish people, and it became Israel.
Yeah.
And then with that became all the wars and all the attacks and everything else like that.
Well, the attacks started before that because there were Jews living in Israel prior to that, and some of the worst attacks that ever occurred happened before the State of Israel, was called the State of Israel by the United Nations.
Now, I'll be honest. Like, I'm Jewish. I went to Israel. What's it called? Birthright. After I graduated from college, with a group of other young people. I'm not a fan of Netanyahu. I don't agree with the way they handled the whole situation of the building of the West Bank and what they actually did in Gaza and so forth. Netanyahu as a person, I feel, is not really the right leader. Because as long as I've been around, as long as I've been alive, there has been conflict between Jews and Jews and Muslims in that region. And I remember even when I went to Israel, the tour guide, that was showing us around, we went to the square where Rabin got killed.
Yeah.
And he kind of broke down the whole story to us about how Rabin and what's the name of the PLO leader at the time?
Yasser Arafat.
Arafat. They had been at war forever, both sides, killing each other and so forth. They realized as they got older, and Rabin was a general in the Israeli army, so this was an actual soldier.
I was there. I was actually in Israel when he got assassinated. That's when
you were there when it happened. Okay, but you weren't in the
16.
square when it happened, though.
No, but I was in Israel when that happened.
You were in Israel when it happened,
and I remember like trying to understand it. Like how come a Jew assassinated another Jew? Like I didn't understand that.
Well, right, because what happened was, at one point, I believe Clinton brokered Arafat and Rabin to actually publicly meet and shake hands, which was the first time this ever happened in the history of the conflict. And there was really a feeling of like, okay, like the Jews and the Muslims are finally going to work it out because the two biggest leaders are actually shaking hands and having a conversation. But then what was happening at the same time was there were certain people that didn't like this coming together. And there was an extremely right-wing Jewish kid that was going around and meeting with a bunch of rabbis, a bunch of right-wing rabbis and I guess he had quoted something in the Torah that said, well, if a Jew kills another Jew, then he should be killed based on these passages. So therefore, if Rabin's policies are killing Jews, should Rabin be killed?
Right.
And some of the rabbis said, well, hypothetically, yes.
Sure.
Not thinking this was actually going to happen. And from what I understand, Netanyahu was part of this real right-wing kind of anti-Rabin feeling during this time. And during a peace rally in Israel, that right-wing kid goes and kills Rabin right in the middle of the square, which basically ended the peace talks because Netanyahu took over after that. And since that point, it's never been good from my point of view. And I'm Jewish, and I'm saying it.
That's definitely like one way of looking at it. I read it, and I read the entire completely different story.
Okay, let's hear your version.
To me, it's all irrelevant. Netanyahu, the right, the left, all of that is just completely irrelevant. Israel's the Jewish homeland. We've tried like time and time again work together with the brothers, our cousins and brothers, Arab and Muslim brothers and cousins. And time again, they've made it their business to not just tell us that they want us not just gone, but to actually try to pull it off. And after October 7th, there's no one's fault. It's not Netanyahu's fault that these people came over the border and took back families and kids and murdered people. I don't know if you saw the documentary for the Nova Festival. Have you watched that yet?
No, I didn't watch the actual documentary, but I was.
You got to watch that
happening.
You got to watch that documentary. It follows 10 kids at that festival and what they went through, and you see some crazy shit. I was there, I went and I met the families of the hostages and all of that. To me, Israel and the Jewish people are linked, as you see, because motherfuckers hate Jews and they'll blame Israel, but at the end of the day, it's the way it is. There's anti-Semitism. People hate Jews. Israel and Jews are linked. You can't take Israel away from the Jews. You can't take it out of the equation. It's just a part of it. It's part of it because it's where we come from. It's deeply ingrained into the prayers, into the ideas, into the themes of every aspect of Judaism. And for someone who knows nothing of Judaism, which is the majority of our country that grew up in Reform America, post-Holocaust, post-getting out of Russia, post-getting out of everywhere, where religion and Judaism was the farthest thing they wanted anything to do with, and they never got to explore to understand it, it's very easy to point the fingers at politics and say this and that. But the truth of the matter is that they're bound together. And, I'm not saying I agree with all political sides and all the things that Israelis have done and this, that, and the other thing. But the bottom line is that it's a known thing that they don't want Israel there. They want to eliminate us in any fashion, in any way possible. And Israel being the homeland of the Jewish people, it needs to be. 6 million of us were murdered, not so long ago by the most technologically scientific, perfect group of people, the most civilized Germans, This shit happened in the 40s, in the 30s and the 40s, This evil exists and it'll exist again. And this happened since the beginning of time. And if you're a small-minded Jew who only sees your life, that you grew up in this golden era of Judaism in some kind of suburbs or your parents were lawyers or doctors or, that's how people see the Jews. But the Jews, we go back, It makes no sense why we're still here. It makes no sense that such a small group of people have influenced the world on such a major way. It's bonkers. And I used to get very turned off, when I was religious, by this idea of the chosen people. It used to drive me insane. And I'll tell you, now I'm not humble anymore when it comes to it. We are the chosen motherfuckers. There is no reason why such a small group of people hated and murdered for so many years have made it this far. And some of it has to do with Israel. So to think that we're just going to fucking leave, pack up, and say goodbye is a huge mistake, and I don't know, maybe I'm going on a little further than what you wanted me to do, but I just have to say how I feel about it, It's emotional for me.
It's
not,
good.
it's not going to be all, I'm not going to answer you with a million fucking facts about this, that, and the other thing. I'm going to come at it from a very emotional place. I'm very connected to it, and, that's what it is.
Look, the majority of the world has never been to Israel. So when Hamas, who doesn't actually recognize Israel as a country and doesn't actually communicate directly with Israel, they have to go through Palestine, the Palestine Authority to even communicate on any level.
Which, by the way, is fucking full of shit. The Palestine Authority and Yasser Arafat was a fucking criminal and a crook and a horrible human being. So the idea that he was this, the peace was happening is a bit of a stretch, I think.
Okay, fair enough. I'm just talking about the stories that I've studied.
Yeah.
But look, I want to say this because, with the anti-Semitism and everything that's happening, the majority of the people have never been to Israel and really don't understand. Israel is a full-blown first world country, extremely advanced, skyscrapers, major cities.
Gays
Israel
have rights.
is not going anywhere.
Right,
I've been there, I think, 3 times.
Right, gays
to
have
say
rights.
that Israel's going to go away and so forth, that's like saying California is going to go away.
Women
it's
have
not
rights.
going anywhere.
Yep. It's
And that's not just my opinion. It's the reality of the economy and the structure in the country itself.
Yeah.
Now, I don't. When the Hamas attack happened, 2,200 rockets got launched. 3,000 Hamas soldiers breached Israel. 1,139 people, including 815 civilians, were killed, mostly at the festival. 251 people were kidnapped. That was horrific. The response from Israel and the number of civilians that were killed in Gaza and so forth, I felt was horrific as well. I felt that it was extremely heavy-handed and it didn't need to happen in that fashion. I feel that there's fault on both sides.
Human shields. You understand the concept, right? These are
I
not
understand,
armies
but
battling.
you have to work around those human shields to a certain degree because you are killing those humans who have nothing to do with the conflict.
Except that they are cheering in the streets when 7 and 18-year-old girls with their legs twisted backwards, blood pouring out of their vaginas, are being brought in pickup trucks. They're fucking spitting on them and cheering like, so there is a question as to, at the same time, there are videos of Gazans saying, free us from Hamas, get us out of here. So It is a question. I haven't been to Gaza. I don't really know what the people of Gaza feel, but I see some shit. You have to kind of judge to some extent. But it's just like a serious thing. So let me ask you a personal question, right? I don't know if you have a family. Let's say you live in New York City, right? In New Jersey, there's a group of fucking maniacs that want you dead. They come into your house on Saturday morning when you're unarmed. They shoot your fucking wife in front of your head. They put your babies in an oven and make you watch them while they burn in an oven. Then they take you back to a tunnel where they keep you for 300 days and shoot you in the head, right? Let me ask you, if this happens to you, what are you going to do? You're going to go to fucking Jersey and look for your family if they're held hostage, and you're going to do whatever the fuck you have to do. You know what I'm saying? This idea that we're supposed to just sit back, I mean, bro, don't get me started, man.
I'm not saying that everyone's supposed to sit back. I understand what you're saying, but as of...
What are we supposed to do? All the bombs are in schools. They're all fucking under... They're all in schools. They're all underneath schools. They're all in fucking bedrooms. Missiles underneath kids' beds.
I get it.
Tunnels. The tunnels are under the schools.
I understand conceptually what's happening.
They fucking send a memo. They tell people you got to leave. At the very least, they send a memo. They fucking drop shit from the sky, fucking leaflets. They tell people, get the fuck out of here. We're going in. We're going to find these tunnels. We're looking for our fucking hostages. Innocent civilians that you fucking broke down the wall and brought back to your fucking place. You think they didn't have this in mind? This is exactly what they want. They're a fucking death cult. They are a death cult. They want their people dead. They want their people dead so that the rest of the world will come against Israel. It's not fucking hard to see.
I understand how it's playing out
they say it
in the media.
Very clearly. They say this.
On this date, 43,000 people have been killed. 41,000 Palestinians and about 1,700 Israelis. Those numbers is what people have a problem with.
I don't have a problem with those numbers.
You don't have a problem with 41,000 Palestinians.
You wouldn't have a problem with it if it was your fucking 2-year-old in the tunnel.
Most of which are children, women, civilians, and so forth. Yes, some of those are Hamas, and I understand there's repercussions for being in Hamas. But kids getting killed, I can't co-sign that on a number like that. When you talk
about, what do you do? What co-sign? There's no co-sign. What do you do?
30 to 1.
What do you do? Sit back? Just let it keep happening?
You don't sit back, but you have to have a plan that's not also killing children and women and people that have nothing to do.
Okay, so in Hezbollah, they blew up the fucking pagers, right? So they're getting a little bit better. This is not something...
They are. I think it's fucking interviewed Eric Prince, who's the founder of Blackwater, and we talked about how that even happened. Do you know how they did that?
I know exactly how it happened, yeah.
Really? Yeah. So from your point of view, what happened?
Basically, when they knew they were going to be needing pagers and walkie-talkies and not being on cell phones, they found the company that makes the pagers that they order from. They've created the pagers for that company and put bombs in them. And fucking we're tracking them and we're listening to them the whole time. And it's only that they started to figure it out. That's the reason why they fucking pulled the plug when they did. But they were tracking them for a while on those pages.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because when me and Eric Prince talked about that, because everyone's thinking like somehow Jews found some sort of technology to blow up anyone's cell phone and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way. You have to put an actual bomb in that device during the supply line creation of that device.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what happened.
That's the Mossad. That's some genius fucking shit. But you know what? You know, with Hamas, maybe, I don't know. I'm not in the government. I don't know why they weren't prepared on October 7th. I don't know why they didn't know where those tunnels were, why they hadn't taken them out ahead of time, you know, but there is a whole situation going on. You know, it's like, I don't know that anybody, you know, a lot of people can complain and say, how could they do this? How could they do this? But I don't know that anybody knows of another way that they could have done, pulled off, you know, to eliminate Hamas. There's no question that has to be done. It has to be done. You can't live next to a neighbor who has kidnapped your family and is holding them in their house and just continue to live and pretend it didn't happen. You got to go into their fucking house and find your fucking family and bring them back and destroy those fucking people so that they won't do it again, because it's in their fucking charter. They're going to continue to do it till the end of time.
Right. I mean, there's still currently 97 hostages of this day. And you've actually called for Hamas to be destroyed. You said, I would like to see any terrorist, Hamas, or person who believes Israel has no right to exist or the Jews have no right to it. I would like Israel to destroy these people. Then I would like to see some type of new world that comes about in Gaza where Jews can go back to the Middle East, where we can go back to synagogues where our great-great-grandparents were, and we could pray together. I'd like to see the destruction of evil.
Yeah. Fundamentalist Islam, radical terrorism, death squads, death fucking cults need to be eliminated. And then all of the Jews, all of the Sephardic Jews that were thrown out of all of those countries, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, Iraq, right? They can all go back. And the moderate Muslims and the moderate Jews can live together in peace and harmony in a new world where the Middle East isn't run by these motherfucking crazy people. And you think they don't want it? They're fucking singing in the streets of Iran. They're singing in the streets when Hezbollah dude fucking got murdered, right? You think the Lebanese Christians, they want to live under Hezbollah? You think the women want to have no rights? There's no gay rights. There's no women's rights. There's no nothing. I know what it's like to live within a hardcore religion. You know what I mean? There's nothing. You know, these people want to be free, I think. And the ones who don't, you know, and are hell-bent on the destruction of Israel and the Jews, I think we should fucking eliminate them. I'm fucking thrilled when I see that.
Well, according to Eric Prince, who, like I said, is the founder of Blackwater, and who really knows this stuff. I mean, he's had thousands of troops deployed throughout the Middle East and involved in thousands of conflicts. He says that Iran is actually behind all this. Iran is the one that once, you had the elections in Gaza and Hamas became the ruling party. He said that Iran came in and funded them, put all the money behind them.
It's not a mystery. It's a known thing.
And now we're in a situation where Iran is launching missiles against Israel. Now we're on the brink of a war between Israel and Iran. Do you believe that Iran was behind all this?
Yeah, for sure. It's like a known thing. It's not a mystery. It's something that's been known for years. I mean, anyone, I think, who pays any attention to politics or whatever knows this. You know, I don't know a lot about politics. This is the one area where, I pay a little bit of attention. Fucking Iran is behind it all. Hezbollah, Hamas. I mean, those are the the pawns that Iran uses. And I'm hoping that we fucking make a change now, because they stepped over the boundary now. And they're gonna find out.
Well, you said that after the October 7th attack, you're considering wearing a beard and yarmulke again.
Yeah. I feel a stronger connection to being Jewish again, and I think that's the what I meant probably when I said that is like, I went through this whole journey, like, we talked about it as a kid. And I got into Judaism. I got very into it. It became the core of my identity. The center of everything was around God and Judaism and being Jewish and music, And then I phased out of it. I felt like there were certain things I didn't like. There were certain things holding me back. I moved beyond it. And, at that time, I started to just reconnect with who am I as a human, as a father, as a husband, as a musician. And Judaism and being a Jew is a part of that, but not the center, not the core of it. And after October 7th, immediately I had a show that morning in Vegas, or that afternoon. I was Reggae Rise Up. And my son is in Israel, so it was Shabbos, and he keeps Shabbos. He wasn't calling me, so I was a little nervous what was going on. And I'm like backstage at this reggae festival. I feel very out of place. And I right away, my nature is to try to find another Jew. So another guy's a singer. I'm trying to find him to do something with him. Maybe we do a song together or make a post. He ignores me from the bat. All of a sudden, for the first time ever, not responding to my text messages. Then I'm on stage. I see someone with an Israeli flag. I pull him up on stage. And all of a sudden, this feeling came back to me, like from being at the Rotterdam 10 years ago at that festival, this feeling of enormous Jewish pride, and this feeling that that all of a sudden now this is, again, whether I want it to be or not, this time, this is just the core of who I am. It's not about religion or anything else. And I step into this role now, moving forward, of making it a point that people know that I'm Jewish and that I love Israel, and I stand behind them.
Well, during your recent Hold the Fire tour, a bunch of shows got canceled last minute.
Yeah, 3.
3 shows. And is this because of the whole pro-Palestine
Yeah,
kind of feeling that's been happening?
for sure. So yeah, they know oftentimes when I'm coming to town, protests and whatnot, and sometimes those protests have been, had an effect to the point where, like, members of the staff don't come to work, or the showrunner, doesn't want to hire the security or whatever it is, and there's different things. But we played like 48 shows, I think, on that tour. So 3 of them got canceled, and one of them, when it got canceled, we went down the street. I found another place, and we reset all our shit up and played the show down the street, So, it happens. It's happening now. So it is what it is.
Well, right. The U.S. Palestine Community Network and several other groups are actually calling for demonstrations at your shows.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's getting worse in a way?
I don't think so. I don't know. I did a tour February, March. That's where it really popped off like that. And then I played shows since and haven't really had any issues. So I guess we'll see what happens.
Well, and you said that you're really feeling out of place in America ever since October 7th.
Yeah,
I mean,
like,
are you considering moving to Israel?
yeah, I've always considered moving to Israel. I always have, I mean, I'm not ready to just pack up and leave yet. I'm American. I mean, this is where I not only come from, but this is where I've made a living for the last 20 years, not just in New York or California, but towns like Omaha, Nebraska, and freaking, Louisville, Kentucky, or Kansas City. I mean, these are the venues, and this is the country that I've spent hours and hours and hours playing shows, traveling on a tour bus, and I feel that it's my place. But definitely, you can feel the tension, and it's real. And I don't feel like it's something that we need to escape or run away from. I think it's something to confront head on.
Well, you said that young people are attracted to the darkness of Hamas. You said it's very sexy to them. These terrorists are looked at as freedom fighters, and whatever happens to the oppressor, they have it coming to them. There's something very tantalizing about the darkness of it. But the Jewish people are light.
Yeah, and people are very quick to just jump to his side because for very shallow reasons, I think. And I think that there's something attractive, to people without having any real understanding or idea about what the conflict is, who Jews are, what Israel is to the Jews, and the Jews to Israel, the history of us. So people are very quick to jump to the opposing side because it's fucking cool, to them. And I think that's a big part of it.
I mean, yeah, it's interesting that Jews essentially get blamed for everything, down to, Diddy's whole situation. Like, hold on, let me look this up. Like, for example, with all these charges against Diddy, there's this viral set of tweets that basically said that Diddy, came up under Clive Davis, and Clive was the one that taught him all his evil ways and so forth. So, I remember, so basically Jews are being blamed for what Diddy is doing with all the alleged rapes and everything.
Yeah, we have to
I-
be the mastermind somehow behind the, it's a classic anti-Semitic trope. It's that the Jews are the mastermind behind all the bad shit that happens, that they acknowledge that we're smarter than most people, but, they think that we're the ones behind everyone's fucking evil,
I mean, look, I'm not a big fan of the whole chosen people thing. You mentioned that you embrace it. Me, I don't, because I feel that it creates a level of conflict.
Well, like I said,
between
wait,
human beings.
I don't want to say I embrace it. I'm saying I was trying to be real with you to say that a shift happened. It's something that I've never embraced. It's something I've always felt very, very opposed to and anti. I'm saying, and this place, emotionally, where I am right now, I feel it's time to lean in. You know what I'm saying? And be proud. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying like, oh yeah, we're chosen. Any religion that claims that they are the ones and others aren't is completely missing the boat. And so just I want to just correct you on that.
Yeah, I mean, when I've heard that term, it's always bothered me because it creates a level of envy by people who feel they aren't chosen. And this is where you get the whole, well, Jewish people coming from Eastern Europe aren't really Jews. They really stole that religion and adopted it. But for example, when I did my DNA test recently, a big part of my DNA is Bedouin from the Middle East. So I'm like, okay, well, so much for that concept. My people actually do come from the Middle East originally. But the whole thing of, certain people feeling that they're chosen and feeling that they're better than everyone else, and then other people feeling they're not chosen and feeling a level of envy or anger, and then feeling that maybe they're really the chosen one of these other people are faking it, and
Sure.
so forth. It's a clusterfuck on a lot of different levels, and I personally don't like it. I don't feel like I'm chosen. I was born Jewish. I'm not very religious. I don't really believe in God. And I hate how things play out sometimes when it gets to these types of conversations and the way it's affected me.
Yeah. I agree with you. I have no disagreement with everything you just said. I'm full agreement with you with all that stuff. At the same time, you have to fucking acknowledge we are a certain special motherfucking group of people, religious or not religious. And I'm not saying that we're moralistically, ideal or something, but the impact that we've had on the world is beyond anything else that the world has ever seen.
No, listen.
How do
I
you
feel
like
the
that Mark
impact,
Twain? You ever listen
is
to
exceptional, and
the
I
Mark
think
Twain
that
the Mark Twain poem? You ever hear that one?
which one?
He has a poem called "The Jew." I think it's called "The Jew."
Huh? How does it go?
You gotta pull it up. You gotta read it, man. You gotta read it. It's
Mark
incredible.
Twain, the Jew. Hold on one
You read it right.
second.
You can read it on the show. It's good. It's like a page. It's not long.
If statistics are right, the Jews constitute about 1/4 of the human race. It suggests a nebulous puff of stardust lost in the blaze of the Milky Way. Properly, the Jew ought hardly to be heard of, but he is heard of. He has always been heard of. He is as prominent on the planet as any other people, and his importance is extravagantly out of proportion to the smallness of his bulk. That's part of it.
Yeah, the whole thing is incredible, though. You gotta.
Yeah. I mean, look. Throughout history, there's been so many horrific things that have happened to Jewish people. Me personally, my family had to move out of Russia because they realized that being in that position, I would be extremely, extremely limited in my opportunities as I got older because my parents' lives were limited. My dad couldn't go to certain universities. He couldn't get certain jobs. His first wife left him because she got so much backlash over marrying a Jew when she wasn't a Jew herself. And I think that type of oppression and that type of violence over the years forces people to function in a certain type of way and to take, every advantage they possibly could because they know so many of those advantages are taken away from them. So when they do have an opportunity to do well, they overdo it. And, I don't think there's anything DNA-wise, that separates us from other humans. But I think as a group of people, knowing the history, we realize that we have to work harder to a certain degree because there is so many people against us. And, that's just life. At the end of the day, I do feel like all people are equal, and I don't think that anyone should be treated any differently, any better or worse, regardless of their bloodline, their race, their religion, their sexuality, anything else like that.
Yeah, and I don't know why we're having that conversation, because that's an obvious thing,
Yeah,
that is an obvious thing.
I feel
agree
you,
with
but
you.
it's not obvious to everybody, because
All
when you
people
go
should be treated equal.
online
All people
and
are
see
equal.
this, like I said, Jews are blamed for every possible thing that's wrong in the world. I mean, imagine a tiny group of people being able to create that much chaos throughout the world.
Right.
When it's just not humanly possible. But
right, but that's what people believe.
I've always identified as Jewish because I was born into that. Before hip hop, before my career, before my my extended family and so forth, I was Jewish. So it would always be wrong of me to try to hide that or try to downplay it and so forth, like a lot of people do. I am who I am, but like I said, I don't always agree with the policies of Israeli politics. And the thing is, and I think a lot of people don't understand this, is that you could be anti-Netanyahu and not be anti-Semitic.
Sure.
And I think that's lost on a lot of people.
Sure.
That's like saying you could dislike Trump and still love America.
Yeah.
Trump does not encompass every person in America. There's a lot of people who love Trump. There's also a lot of people who hate Trump.
Yeah.
There's people who love Netanyahu, people who hate him. I don't agree with Netanyahu, but I'm still pro-Jewish. And I think a lot of people need to accept that Netanyahu and the people making decisions in this war is not the entirety of all Jewish people.
Yep. And also, I mean, I don't know anyone who has a solution, who thinks that they could do a better job, or that it hasn't, that they haven't tried. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you think that this just all of a sudden, I don't know. I mean, this shit goes deep, and
Well, it goes deep in the fact that Netanyahu has been in power for, 20-something years at this point.
It's to me, it's
not great either. Like, at the end of the day, it's almost like a Putin-like situation. If you have one leader who's just there for decades and decades and decades, you don't get any new ideas that could actually come in and actually try different things. So, like I said, man, it's a complicated situation. I don't think in our lifetime there's going to be a solution. And that's sad to me, because when you go to Israel and you actually meet with the people, most of the people, I mean, especially before October 7th, they don't want to continuously fight. Like, for example, when you go, I remember in Tel Aviv, this was interesting to me. When you walk into a mall, there's a security person at the door, and you think, okay, they're just checking people for stealing stuff. No, they're actually checking bags for bombs. That is a normal occurrence in a major city mall. You go to America, people are not checking for bombs, but over there, they're really checking for bombs because bombs really do explode in malls.
Yep.
And the one thing I also learned from being in Israel is that a terrorist group is designed to stop the peace process. That's the whole thing of it all, is that whenever you get a situation where people are close to actually working things out and compromising, a terrorist on whatever side will blow up a school bus. And the first thing people say is, you can't talk to these people. Look what they do. They blow up school buses. They're animals. We can't have conversations with them. And at that point, the peace process stops. And that's the problem, is that you have to ignore the terrorism and you have to actually work towards compromise. And a group like Hamas, unfortunately, can't compromise. Because like I said, they don't actually consider Israel a country. They consider them occupiers and refuse to actually communicate with them directly. So unfortunately, with Hamas, it's not a solution. But if you actually offer the people in Gaza, in the West Bank, an alternative to Hamas, where they could actually live a peaceful life, they could actually raise families, grow businesses, there's not blockades, there's free travel and so forth, I think most people would choose to be anti-Hamas. But we're not there right now.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be the solution is there has to be, like you said, hopefully a more moderate group will come in and lead the people towards modern freedoms, and have their religion, but not be fucking fanatics that want death to all Jews, you know?
Yes.
And that's hopefully what will happen once, like, it's going to get worse first, you know? It's like, you got to eliminate the fucking, first you got to get rid of all the, you know, the evil, you know? And then you have to replace it. You can't, you know? And it's going to be a long process. But right now, the only upside that I see is, you know, there's no more like pretending or ignoring. Like, this shit is gonna get dealt with. It's getting dealt with right now. It's happening, you know? And it's sad and it's horrible. Innocent people are dying. It's a war, but it's not gonna get better until something happens, you know? And we're living in a time right now when that shit is happening.
Well, I interviewed Neil deGrasse Tyson, the astrophysicist, and we talked about his views of God. And he said that through all of his studies, he has yet to see some level of intelligent force that's involved in the universe. And therefore, he doesn't believe in God. I have a similar point of view. Like I said, I was born Jewish. And when it comes to Judaism, it's a religion as well as a bloodline, right? But me personally, I'm not religious. I don't believe in God. I don't think I'm going to heaven after I die. I have to make the most of the world when I'm here. You've hopped in and out of religion in various ways, from growing up in a family that was somewhat religious to going hardcore Hasidic Jew to shaving off your beard, not being Hasidic anymore, now considering becoming, you know, more Hasidic again, you know, in terms of a beard and yarmulke. Do you believe in God, and how sure are you in that belief?
I believe in God, but I believe it's a belief. Like, I don't believe there's proof of God or it's something that you're supposed to believe in or you should believe in. I believe it's, you know, a personal thing. I believe in God. I feel a connection to it. There was a time where I felt it was the only thing, and that I would think about God obsessively throughout the day. I'd compare everything and was on this whole trip. And at some point, I felt that if there is a God, he probably wants us to leave him the fuck alone and give him some space, you know, and stop fucking saying all these things in his name and doing things in his name and doing all these things for God. So that was kind of the trip that I came to at the end of it all, was like God basically being like, all right, dude, like, yeah, God, there's God. Now fucking go live your life and, you know, be a mensch, try to be a good person. And so I know that I'm not the first person to think that, but I like God. I like the idea of God. I like toying with it. I like playing with it. I like connecting to it, you know? To me, it's not like anymore something that like God, this, that, or something I have to figure out. It's more of like I spent a lot of time thinking about it and coming up with different ideas about God. And now I can just be like doing emails, you know, take care of my kids. And then I just like take a joint and walk my dog on the trail. And I start thinking about God. And boom, I start going with it. It's fun for me, you know, something I enjoy, but it's not like a thing of pressure. And I don't know if there's a God, you know. I don't necessarily, you know, say there is or there isn't, you know. I like to believe in God. I mean, definitely a little bit. It's fun.
It's a very dope answer, man. I don't think I've ever got an answer like that. So it's always one or the other. It's always like God definitely exists, and
Right.
I have absolute proof of it, or no, God doesn't exist at all. There's no proof of it. I mean, to
Right.
say I don't know, maybe I like the idea of it, but I'm not totally sold on it. I think it's dope, man. I think that, you know, it's a good way of thinking about it.
It has to be. It has to be the only way. I mean, you can't say there isn't or there is. There's no way of knowing. There's no facts of what there is or there isn't when it comes to that. You know, it's the big question mark. It is the big question mark of the world.
Yeah, I mean, you've even seen it play out with Kanye, because remember, he went fully Christian, gospel album, no swearing, didn't want people in the studio having sex unless they were married.
Right, crying about the abortion or
Yeah,
almost abortion.
anti-abortion.
Right.
You know, Jesus is king, everything else like that. Sunday service.
Yeah, he drank the juice. He definitely became newborn for a minute. He definitely drank that
he drank
religious
the juice.
Yeah.
And then I remember seeing an interview, and he said, well, all those prayers went unanswered. And now you see him, and there's no mention of Jesus, swearing, sex, drugs. It's almost as if that's part of his life never existed. And at one point, it was all him.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting kind of seeing people jump in and out of, real hardcore religion like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's something I don't know how long he was into it, but for me, it wasn't an easy thing, coming out of it. It was, once you dedicate a certain amount of your life, you get, into something, a certain amount of time and energy, and it's the core thing. It's very hard to just be like, oops, I think I might have made a mistake. You know how many hours I spent in shul?
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of hours breaking my teeth over the letters. And, I feel I gained a lot from it. And so I don't look back on it and wish it didn't happen. It was a real hard time for me, but I think it gave me discipline. It gave me a lot of different things, more of an understanding, of who I am, where I come from. Prayer, which is always important to me. I became good at that. I became something that I know how to do and understand and connect to something. I mean, there was a lot I think I took from it, so I don't kill myself. But I think a lot of people, that's a big reason why they don't change their minds about things, is because, they don't want to go back on their own ego, or they can, think that they may have made a mistake and wasted time.
Yeah, no, I feel you, man. I feel you. Well, Matisyahu, man, I appreciate you coming in.
Yeah.
I think a conversation like this is needed at a time like this, when you have two people who come from similar backgrounds, but don't necessarily have the same idea of religion and politics and so forth, especially at a time right now where you're potentially looking at a war between Iran and Israel. And that may be that big thing that changes
Everything.
the future. We don't know, because like we said earlier, Iran has been the one that's been financing a lot of these conflicts.
No, they're out of the closet now. We got them to show their true face.
Yeah.
And now it's going to be on. Like it's not going to be pretty, but hopefully it will be the shift of something, not just for Jews, for everybody from that region.
I agree, and I hope so, because I've been to Israel, but I've also been to Palestine. Part of the whole birthright was us going into Palestine to have dinner with a Muslim family in Palestine and actually talking about our similarities as well as our differences. And I have many, many Muslim friends. My man Napoleon from the Outlaws. Me and Akon have always been cool. Like literally, Trey D. Like the list goes on and on and on and on. And I've always respected them to the fullest, and they've always respected me as well. And I feel that a lot of times these types of conflicts make people choose sides when there's really no side to choose. It's really, you have to deal with individuals and see how they are. And listen, I appreciate you coming in. I wish you all the best. Congratulations on really kind of breaking this barrier of, a Hasidic Jewish kid doing reggae at the highest level and really finding absolute success in it. It just shows that really, when it comes to music, it has nothing to do with how the person looks or where the person is from. If you're dope, you're dope, and people will accept it. And we've seen it, and it wasn't just one big song. It was multiple big songs over a span of time, and big audiences, and performing worldwide, opening up for Sting and, these mega stars and so forth. Congratulations on really shifting things. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you, man. I got to get you to a show, the Beacon Theater in November.
I would love to. I would love to, man. Let me know when it's on.
All right, cool.
That's what it is. Till next time.
All right, Vlad.
Peace.
Peace.